Thank you for joining us. This is Health Your Own Way podcast, and I am your host, Akins. Welcome to another episode. Today, we're going to be talking about trauma bonding, and my guest speaker is Genine. She's a medical intuitive with over 20 years of experience in the field of holistic practice, as well as 15 years of psychology and clinical studies. Her specialty is to help empower people to unmask from their past in order to build healthy relationship with themselves and others. I said a lot, Genine. I said a lot just now, but thank you. I really wanted to have this conversation with you because I feel like, I might at one point in life, we all have some form of trauma bonding or toxic bonding, whatever you want to call it. I think at one point I did it myself. So welcome. And anything else you want to add before we start?
No, just thank you for having me, and let's get down to it.
So I know it sounds like a, silly question, but what is trauma toxic bonding? What is it? What's it, like, how would you define it?
Okay, so trauma bonding is any relationship where a scenario of one person tries to reign power over another person. And this is often masked as very unhealthy. So they'll pretend that they love you, okay, and that they are looking out for your best interest. But it's a form of control, and they do it in such a sly way that you don't understand that you're being abused, and you feel really empowered by them, because a lot of times what happens is trauma bonding is usually in relationships that are long-standing, right? And this can happen with a parent, a child. It can happen in a loving relationship with a partner. It can happen in a work scenario as well, which we're not aware of. And it's where they will almost like love bomb you and then pull their energy back, or where they will represent themselves as really caring, but they're pushing anything positive that you're doing. They demean it, so they make you feel unworthy, and then you fall back into a trap with them. As an example, would be, say you're trying to better yourself. You're trying to go to the gym. Okay, I had this happen to me with one of my past partners, and I was a little overweight, and I wanted to go to the gym to get healthy and feel better, look better. And he would tell me, oh, well, there's no point on doing that because you're always going to be fat. Like things like that, little subtle things. And this happens a lot to people, and that's not the only scenario, right? This happens to many people, and we're not aware of it because we feel attachment to these people. We feel loving bonds because we've grown these situations. And when you're trying to better yourself, a lot of times the people that you're in these trauma bonds with see you trying to progress, and they will try to hinder your growth because they are still stuck in that toxic frame of mind. They don't want you to grow. They don't want you to be better. They want you to stay exactly where they are.
I feel like I've experienced too much trauma bonding in my entire life based on this conversation, but loosely. Okay. There's a lot right there. A lot. I honestly think a lot of people experience that. Even when you said the first comment, not one of the first comment you said was, when somebody says they want to do this, they're kind of controlling you, just try to help you out, right? Mm-hmm. So I remember I wasn't in a relationship. I met this guy, and he said that he's like, I'm only trying to control you to help you. I'm just like, red flags.
Yeah, major red flags.
I was like, okay. But I think when you said the other points of subtle, is it possible to be in trauma bonding that doesn't involve overt need to control, but it could be a toxic relationship where you guys are both very like almost like wall against wall, and you make each other okay.
Sorry. Yeah. So like a lot of times what can happen is with the subtleness, okay? So your partner or whoever it is, family member, doesn't really matter. What can happen is there's a magnetic attraction, right? And then there can be where you're not seeing eye to eye. And then they're trying to manipulate you in a very subtle way. Well, this is the way, right? This is how it is. You have to do this. You have to do that. Example would be, so you're in a new relationship, okay? You're excited about this new relationship, and time's going on, and you don't really know this person, right? You think you know this person, and then you're about to go do, say, you're going for a job promotion. Let's use that as an example. And you think this person's going to be really excited for you because you're leveling up. And instead they're like, well, you are making this amount of money, like this is good, and then you get almost in these arguments where they'd be like, well, you shouldn't do that. And then you'd be like, well, why not? And they're like, well, this and this can happen. All these bad things can happen if you go for that, right? It's very subtle. You don't feel that they're controlling you, but they're trying to deter you away from going for what you really want.
Okay, I haven't specifically had that experience. I think a lot of people, you're right. Some people do have that. Is it fair to say that people that do portray that kind of characteristics to somebody else, would they have low self-esteem issues?
Oh, majority of the time, yes. They're stuck in their toxic cycle, right? So another thing is, excuse me, I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold. So they're stuck in this form of abuse, of their own abuse, right? They need a lot of, what really bottoms down to is insecurities and need for control. And like I said before, it can be very subtle. They don't even half the time realize that they are portraying this need for control. But okay, internally, they are out of control. So when you are not grounded within yourself, and we all could do this, right? I've done it myself before I knew what trauma bonding was, where I wasn't feeling good internally. So I projected that outwards. And then I was trying to control situations that were really out of my control. And I thought at the time that I was actually doing something positive and I was helping the other person, but in retrospect, I was only hindering their growth. I wanted them to stay at the same level as me. For example, I used to live on the streets and I had addiction issues. And some of my friends were getting out and they were getting jobs and they were bettering themselves. Okay. And I was like, well, why are you going to do that? Why can't we just stay here and have some fun? Right. It's way more fun. I tried to keep them with me because I didn't want to be alone. Right. And I didn't know what was going on internally with me. So I was trying to keep them with me in that comfortability zone. So sometimes you don't even recognize, and these people that bring the toxic bonding, they don't recognize because they're wallowing in their own demise, right?
I have another one. So I think I have a different thought process of what toxic bonding is. Mm-hmm. I can't even say it properly, toxic bonding, whatever. For me, when you're in a relationship or any form of relationship, right? And you're just not the right fit, but you're going back and forth with that person. And then that person is making you not a better person, but you're following back into that trap, but you guys should leave each other because health-wise, it's not the right relationship for you. Yeah, what would you call that?
That is still a form of toxic trauma bonding.
Okay, good. So we're in the same place. I'm just like, okay.
Like there is the thing with trauma bonding, toxic bonding, whatever you feel comfortable saying. It has so many different layers to it, right? The bottom of it is kind of like that codependent, narcissistic empath relationship. But, and that's just labels, right? Like a lot of times people aren't actually narcissists, but they have narcissistic tendencies and they're not really empathic, but they have an empathic tendencies, right? So it can show up in many different ways. And a lot of times it is two people that are not a good fit. And they may have been at the front, like when they first started. And this is why I always tell people, when you get into a new relationship, before you progress, like all in, you make sure you get to know that person. And it takes a long time. A lot of people don't really know a person until after 2 years because people, and people tend to jump in because of their own insecurities. So we're talking about love relationships here. They'll jump into these relationships as a form of fulfillment because they're not getting internal fulfillment. And then they start growing with this person and realizing, hey, this is not who I signed up with. Like, I thought you were completely different. Or you'll start growing and the other person's not growing with you. They're staying stuck. So there's many different layers, right? It's toxic bonding, extreme layers. And it all depends on, and that's again, why I say, make sure you take your time and you get to know who you're involved with, because there are going to be little signs. There's going to be red flags that pop up, especially like if you're in an abusive relationship, but you don't know it at the beginning. A lot of women and men end up in these relationships where their partner becomes extremely abusive, just as an example. And there's little signs that get them there. That'll be like, oh, you can't wear that. Oh, you can't eat that. There's subtle signs that will show you that this person that it's breeding a toxic bonding relationship, but you get entrapped in it because one, they're very charming, right? These people that you're dealing with are extremely charming and they're going to make you feel on top of the world, and then you're going to crash. It's like they lift you up so that you're going to fly, but your wings aren't ready, and then they let you go and you crash on the ground.
It's true. Like when you meant, I like the fact that you said it's not only women. Men do face toxic bonding and trauma bonding. Like I've unfortunately, a lot of single mothers or baby mama issues, or even like stuff like that. Like you said, you get to know them before you get involved. A lot of them have kids with some people that they shouldn't even have kids with, and that builds. And then even on the men's side, I think I know someone that did have a toxic relationship, and it was this when you said the small little things about, okay, you can't go there, you can't do that. Why do you want to go to the gym? Who are you trying to look good for? Like stuff like that. That's trying to keep them there, right?
Yeah, and that's the insecurities of the person that is being toxic. And the thing is, they don't a lot of times in these relationships, the person that is bringing that the trauma bonding, the toxicity to they, again, it goes back to their own, like I said, their own insecurities. And this may be also how they were raised. They may have seen this growing up, right? They have internal issues from their childhood, from their own trauma. And this is why I always tell people, you got to look in the mirror when you're going into any kind of relationship or any kind of situation. You don't want to dive in like the fool. Okay, you want to take notice. You want to let things like progress naturally, and don't fall over heels, because again, you miss those red flags. And also on top of that, like if you're in, what is the hurry, right? What is
People
the hurry?
are lonely.
Yeah, and it's because they're lonely. And that's why, like, I work with people and I tell them, you got to get your homeostasis under control, your inner thoughts, your inner dialogue. Like, this is extremely important. People jump into relationships thinking that they're going to find fulfillment, but unless you find fulfillment inside, and it's so cliche, like you hear that,
it's
unless
true.
you love yourself, you can't love anybody else. But the thing is, it is 100% fact, because if not, you're bleeding your toxic traits that you don't even know are toxic traits onto other people, and vice versa. And it's scary. It can be really scary to look at ourselves in the mirror, because one, I just posted this the other day for in my private group about people don't want to heal because they become so attached to the identity of who they are from their trauma that they don't know who they are without it.
100%. They
Yeah.
want to be victims.
Yeah.
Like they're
And
comfortable
so
being victims.
yeah, and then they portray this and project it onto other people and not even realize, and then they're wondering. A lot of times I work with people and they ask me, they're like, well, this and this happened and I don't know why. And I was like, and I'm like, okay, well, let's back it up for a second. You're telling me that you're in an abusive relationship or that you have a controlling partner. What led it to there? Like, why do you not feel that you are worthy enough for better? And this is where it goes into, people get stuck, right? They find that it's really hard to detach from these relationships because there's these close-knit bonds that you've grown with these people. So you have a hard time getting out. And this could be with family, for instance. Family is a really big one, because you feel that you have to be a part of it, right? Because they are your blood. But this is when I explain to my clients that, you know what, closing the door for a little while you're getting yourself together and working on yourself is not a bad thing. Putting up those boundaries and being like, you know what, I'm on this path, I'm trying to better myself, I don't like this behavior, is really, really important. And it's scary, but that's why if you can't do it by yourself, you reach out, right? And you find people that are experts, that know how to navigate these situations in a healthy manner, so that you can build the tools in order to detach in a healthy way. And you don't have to, again, detach forever. And this is where a lot of people are afraid. They're like, well, if I put up a boundary and I say no and I tell this person I can't see them, then that means forever. But it doesn't. It just means I'm going to take myself out of this scenario for a little while because this isn't healthy for me, and I see it that it's not healthy for me, and it's not healthy for the other person either, right? Because in a toxic bonding relationship or a trauma bonding relationship, it affects both sides, right? And that's what we don't understand, is it's not only affecting the person that is being controlled, it's also enabling the person that is the abuser to abuse.
Because you're justifying, if you're accepting that behavior, it makes it seem like it's a normal behavior.
Yeah. And so when I explain people, they're like, well, they're my family. I've known them forever. I need to be there for them. I have to do this. No, this is staying stuck in that victim mentality. You're not being your sovereign. You're not being your savior. You're not helping yourself because you're allowing them to continue the cycle, and you're not breaking the cycle. You're allowing to be victimized. And we tend to get a comfortability in that level, because that's a lot of times people that are in these relationships, they're so comfortable with them because that's all they know, right? And it's scary to think for themselves that, you know what, I deserve better. It's extremely scary. But once they have somebody in their corner, like someone like me, that helps them navigate through these feelings and see, hey, their worth is very important, it becomes a lot easier. And then in time, I like to tell my clients too, not everybody is allowed to go where you're going. This is something I constantly tell my clients. Not everyone's allowed to go where you're going. And it doesn't mean that they can't catch up later. It's just right now they're not allowed on that journey. It's like people are afraid, you know, if I shut the door, that means never. No, it doesn't mean block them forever. It means right now you need to take care of you, and they need to go take care of them. And you know what? When people start detaching from these toxic, abusive relationships, the abuser no longer has anybody. And they 95% of the time, when you detach from them and then other people see you detaching, they'll detach too. And this person that is perpetuating the cycle wakes up and they're like, whoa, why is everybody not involved with me anymore? Why aren't they giving me their time? And then they have to look inwards. And then 95% of the time they do the switch too. And then that's when you come together in a healthy network, whether it is rebuilding the friendship or rebuilding the family net or rebuilding the relationship. I don't normally recommend that.
Baggage.
Yeah, but they start to see like how they were a part of the scenario and how it was bad, and they start making positive changes, right? Because it's like you pull away from the negativity, that person no longer has access to do that negativity.
Just give me a second, Genine. I feel like I had therapy. Just give me a second. Just give me a moment. Give me a moment.
It's all good.
I think, unfortunately, when you said that a lot of people don't heal coming out of a relationship or a bad relationship, I say this because unfortunately, it was funny enough. Yesterday, I saw a story on Instagram, and this one woman just came out of a bad relationship, and she posted on, like, it was just a screenshot. Somebody put a screenshot, said, I'm gonna paraphrase. It's like, I'm gonna try to prove my ex-boyfriend wrong. All you men suck, this and this, you guys this and this. You know what? I'm not good. Like, it's just, you could tell that she was hurting, and then all you guys are full of nonsense. You're SHRT, like, you're full of shit. Sorry, it's my podcast. You're full of shit. Okay. You're full of shit. And I'm just like, how are you purposely writing that on a dating page, like your page, saying that and trying to promote who you are? That means that person is, sorry, go ahead.
She's definitely stemming from her pain body, right? And she's also stemming from her child, her inner child. She wants someone to come be her savior and fix the problem. This happens a lot. So there's like a lot of archetypes in any toxic relationships or any relationships. We have certain archetypes. And when I make archetypes, it's like your personality traits. Okay. And so when people fall into that, like that woman, what's going on is she is stepping back into her victim mentality. She wants somebody to be like, it's okay, you're totally right, all men suck, blah, blah, blah. And she wants to feel that. She wants to stay in that negative stance. And that is because of unhealed wounds, right? And so this is also the attachment wounds. And these stem from usually some kind of form of trauma that you've experienced when you were in your adolescence or younger youth years. And when I say trauma, everybody experiences trauma different. So what may be very significant, like when a lot of people hear trauma, they think of like emergency victims or like rape or things that are super big, right? But trauma can also be you fell and scraped your knee as a child and it traumatized you. You could never get on a bike again. It could also be you got into fights with your sibling, and so now you perpetuate the cycle because there's like you form these certain things from experiences when you're an adolescent.
It could be simple rejection as well too for some people.
Yeah, it could be anything. And this is where people, a lot of times, I have many followers, and like at the beginning of my journey online, like doing stuff online, when I would post all these things, people are like, well, I don't have any trauma. I'm like, I guarantee you do. Everybody has some form of trauma. Yeah, every single person has some form of trauma. And then we go through our understanding of our own attachment wounds, and we don't recognize these things, right? Because they're unconscious patterns that we've created from scenarios of where we stemmed from with trauma. And then this is why people have destructive behaviors. This is also why people fall into unconscious patterns like being an extrovert or an introvert or both. And then you get like your high functioning person that's unaware of how they form the rabbit hole of abuse. Like these people are over givers, under appreciators. So they like,
I know what you mean. I fully know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And then they get into these malignant narcissistic relationships, and they don't even realize that it's happening because they have not dealt with the core victim wound, that child wound of toxicity, of trauma that they've experienced, because it goes subconscious. You don't recognize it. And then you're creating from this subconscious state, from this original wound, and this becomes your programming, that you don't see it as anything other than this is who you are. This is the identity of what I am, right?
I agree with you. And I think it seems to me that a lot of us, we all have trauma, but it's not a norm or open dialogue for people to seek help after something. It's not like, I don't remember when I was young, especially when you're an adolescent, the stuff that you have to deal with internally, because you can't really go to your parents and talk about what you may have experienced with somebody at school to a certain extent. So you have to figure a way to deal with that. Or even when you're a young adult, sometimes it's hard to find somebody. So where I'm going with this is a lot of people are walking with trauma and not self-aware that, they are walking with trauma or even know how to seek help. And I guess my question then to you is, if anybody's looking to, maybe have a conversation with, or even follow your journey or follow what you teach, what is the best platform to reach you out on?
First and foremost, Facebook. You can find me, Genine Turnbull. I also have a private group, which is empowering souls to take off the masks of pain from the past. So usually though, if you find me, Genine Turnbull, and then my business page is also Manifesting with Genine. Anywhere on there is usually the best place to contact me. I am on other platforms. Like I have my own podcast, which is The Nude Beach, Unmasking from the Past.
I did not see that on your bio, Jeannie. I did not see that on your bio. Why was that not on your bio?
Oh, well, I just recently started it.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I am also on YouTube. Pretty much anywhere you type my name, you can find me. I'm on Instagram. The only platform I'm not really on is TikTok, which I'm thinking about possibly going on.
I don't know if I'm ready for that. I'm sorry. I'm not even sure if I'm ready for that. And we're going to have your website details in the video as well as in the show notes as well. But
I encourage any of the listeners too to just come into my group. It's free. We all support each other in there. It's fun. It's high vibe, high energy. And if you have, like, I give so much free stuff in there that if you have topics that you want me to cover, because I do a lot of videos on things like toxic bonding, narcissistic relationships, empathic, codependency, the list goes on, right? Because I want people to become more aware of things that are happening around them and internally what's happening inwards, because people think that things are happening to them, but they're not, they're happening from them. And so I want this self-awareness so that people, even if they don't work with me one-on-one, they have knowledge, because knowledge is power. And having community too is powerful. When you have that support network and you have other people that have gone through similar situations that may not be exact, but they've gone through their own roller coaster, you have somebody as a beacon of hope, or a beacon of hope, and they're there to support. So even if, like I said, if we don't work together, come join, because you're going to get benefit from that.
I love that. I think it's needed. No, I know it's needed. Like I see a lot of people are hurting, and
Me too.
it's not. And I see a lot of stupidness on Instagram, and I see a lot of response from men or women, and you can tell that they're
Oh
hurting.
yeah.
You can tell, and it comes across like a defensive mechanism. And a lot of people want to be a victim. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of
Well,
people
it's
do
like
want to be a
soothing and
victim.
shielding, right? I actually did in my group, I did a whole thing on soothing techniques that we do, and shielding, how we do this when we have unhealed wounds, and so that you can recognize that. So if anything, check it out because it's 95% of the world is walking around with these emotional unhealed wounds, and we don't recognize it because, again, it's at the subconscious level, and it is pain. And then what is sadness? What's the opposite of the sadness on the emotional wheel? It's anger.
But then it's a bit unnerving and scary when you say that, because I feel like a lot of pain and hurt and sadness in this world is because a lot of people don't have the tools to deal with some
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
why I created my business, right? I have many years of study and also a hell of a journey story. So I've been through, I tell my clients I've lived many lives in this lifetime, and it sounds hilarious, but I go into details about my past because, you know what, I want to be real. I want to be raw. And I want people to understand that, like, they're not alone, right? Like, I've experienced some really traumatic things from the age of 2 up until my late 20s, when I decided to get the help, really dive in. And through my whole journey of becoming who I am now and helping people get out of that, I had a roller coaster of learning that I wished I had somebody that really got what I was going through. I went to many therapists before I wound up taking my journey and learning, and a lot of them I never connected with because I felt like I was another number, right? And a lot of them, they never connected with me personally. And I'm not discrediting anybody that
fair enough.
does that, because it's great. These are tools that are needed, but I felt they didn't. I'd ask them questions like, have you gone through this? Like, I was raped at 3. I'm like, have you ever experienced that? And they're like, well, no. I'm like, then how can you help it relate to me on that aspect? And then they would kind of blindly just stare at me and be like, and I'm like, if there was no connection, right? Whereas I tell people my raw story because I want them to know, hey, I've gone through these traumatic experiences. They're pretty heavy. You're going through a traumatic experience. It may not be exactly like my experience, but I understand the empathy there. And I know how you're feeling internally. And I know the things that you are subconsciously doing to sabotage the life that you want. So I help people unmask this in a fun way because, well, they need that. I needed that. So I've created it because I know the feeling.
I commend you, and I, not to be negative, but I find that a lot of people aren't willing to open up because the pain's too much.
I was there.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't try, like anything in life, to get to the next level. There's some form of pain and you have to go through it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. It's not an easy road to uncover and unmask, but it can be gentler than most people give it credit for because they're just used to talking about it and reliving it. That's the other thing too. A lot of clinical help that is out there, and I know firsthand because I've experienced it, when you're talking about these things, it's hard because you relive the experience. And then when you're reliving the experience, your mind doesn't realize that that's not happening. So you're triggering yourself over again and reliving that experience, even though it's not happening in the physical right now. So there's ways and tools that can help you to uncover the core wound without re-traumatizing and putting yourself on a more destructive path.
Okay. Just one more before I let you go. For anybody who wants to join your Facebook group, could you just say it out loud so we can have it there for them as well?
Yes, it is. 1 second. Empowering souls to take off the masks from the past.
Perfect. I want to say thank you for this conversation. We're glad to have you join us. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, share with anyone that needs to be empowered and inspired, and don't forget to join us next week for the next episode of Health Your Way podcast. Have a good day, you guys.